Test, test. All right. Hello, everyone. All 10 of us. I'm glad we've got actually a small group today, because I actually kind of prefer the interaction of just, having a bunch of faces I can focus on rather than a big crowd. So that's great. Plus, I'm sure people will trickle in with lunch. So I'm Adam Stanley, if we haven't already met. Otherwise, it's a pleasure to meet you for the first time. I work with the developer relations team at RIM, and I'm the team lead of the HTML5/AIR tech experts group. So what that means is we just know a lot about web development. I was supposed to be joined with my colleague Dave today. Unfortunately, he's sick. We got news of that this morning, so he won't be able to attend the event today. But I did still want to provide a reference to his name, just in case you had questions about this session, because he designed most of this content. Right? So I'm going to go through some of his slides, and then I've got a bunch of pieces of my own in here, and I prefer just to keep this interactive. I mean, it's a social subject, so let's be social throughout this conference. That'd be great. Cool. So, it was really exciting to, finally announce during the keynote that we do have over 80 million subscribers, and represents a growth in, the number of BlackBerry users there are worldwide, which is always nice to see. And of those, there's a large majority of active social users. A lot of people using BlackBerry Messenger, which is no surprise, and even other social networks like Facebook. In fact, in some regions, BBM is the main reason why people buy a BlackBerry, right? Like in Dubai, for instance, that's the only reason that many people I've spoken to actually use a BlackBerry, just for BBM. Also in Indonesia, I met a guy who had 4 BlackBerries, and I didn't know why he had those. He looked like Batman. He had a belt covered in them. He says, "Oh, this one's for work, this one's for family, this one's for my wife, and this one's for my girlfriend." Oh, okay, whatever works for you. But, I mean, it uses it to stay connected to different sets of people, which is pretty neat. All right. Given that we now represent 3 different unique platforms, it's important to recognize that users want to be social, regardless of which one their friends are connected on. So whether they're using a Playbook OS connected through Bridge to a smartphone, they still want to be able to use things like BBM, or they still want to be able to post to social networks like Twitter and Facebook, right? And we want to enable that too, and we want to enable it for our developers as well. So some of the content that I'm going to talk about today is showing you how you can integrate with certain social networks. A lot of websites like Twitter and Facebook have provided developer APIs that you can use to build features into your apps. I'm going to show you some examples of that. I just wanted to highlight that the nature of these demos and these presentations are relevant regardless of which platform you're interested in. Right? I know we have an international audience here today. People are coming from regions where certain BlackBerry smartphone devices are more prevalent than Playbook, and certainly the BlackBerry 10 dev alphas. There's only 5,000 of them out there in the wild right now, 5,800 now with the dev alpha Bs. But that community is going to explode, obviously, very soon. That's going to be huge, and so that's where we want everyone to focus right now. Prepare yourself for BlackBerry 10 launch, because when it comes, the best opportunity for you is going to be at launch, certainly. Before we really jump into this, is there any questions? Is there any specific subjects matter that you came here expecting to hear about that I want to make sure that I cover before we get through this? No? All right. Hey, Paul. Good. Cool. So the whole emphasis of this is, we've got all these themes, the flow, connect, extend. We're going to focus on the connect part, and breaking that out further is really this, this theme or this mood of collaboration, being connected to, a cloud of users, a cloud of friends, sharing content, sending pictures, messages, data, files. It's all very important, and a lot of people take it for granted. And the best apps provide those experiences in a fluid way, such that the user, it just feels so naturally to say, open menu, share, right? BlackBerry does a great job of that. We want to make sure that developers include those paradigms in their apps as well. And finally, the whole purpose of this, obviously, is success, right? Which translates into dollar signs. It's money, right? We want to make apps. What's up, Luca? We want to make apps that generate revenue in the best way. One great way of doing that is making them social. So, some value points, obviously, right? Right away, a social app immediately adds this point of communication. You can connect with someone else, right? It's not a fire and forget message, it's a live response. You have either a live chat or crowdsourced data, voting, live messaging, those sorts of things. Social apps, especially with BBM, helps you promote your apps, right? So you can get more downloads, you can get a bigger community of users. Obviously, what that translates into is more people using the product, more people paying for certain monetization features that you've enabled, either if it's a paid download or paid service, you make more money, right? And the final point is you can make more money, which is obviously the very important part of developing on the BlackBerry platform. So this session is going to focus on the web side of things. I hope everyone's came into this with that understanding. There's a lot you can do on web, and a lot of it has to do with the fact that there are some very good standards out there defined for browsers to follow, and obviously BlackBerry 10 has done an excellent job at following those standards. So there's a lot of great features, web APIs, communication-related APIs that are out there that you can use in your applications to enable those capabilities. We're going to talk a little bit about some of these web standards. I'm not going to talk about WebSockets, but I'm going to talk about OAuth, which is an open authentication standard that exists out there, and how it can be used to connect to endpoints securely. Open source itself is a very social concept. You're putting your code out there in the wild for others to see and participate in. And in a perfect open source community, you have a distributed network of developers all working together, all staying coordinated and communicating regularly, adding new features, consuming those features, and making it better. The WebWorks platform itself, in fact, the BlackBerry web platform as a whole has a strong heritage of open source, right? It uses the WebKit browser engine, which is an open source product. WebWorks applications are, a standalone container running your web content powered by WebKit. WebWorks is open source. If you choose to, hop the fence and use third-party products like Adobe PhoneGap, that uses the Cordova engine, open source. This is all goes back to the fact that web as a whole, being based on standards, it's open, it's free, it's ready for sharing, makes it really a vibrant community for open source communities. And of course, the BlackBerry Messenger API, fully accessible in WebWorks applications. It's supported on BlackBerry OS 5 to 7 and BlackBerry 10, starting as of yesterday during the keynote when we updated the SDKs. So far, so good. All right. So let's talk about OAuth. Anyone used OAuth before? Raise your hands. No? Luca has. I'm surprised you came to this session. That's good. OAuth can be scary. It's overwhelming in some cases, and it's got a big learning curve really to fully understand what it is and why it's important and how to implement it correctly. And many developers, including myself, have been scared off early in the process because I just didn't have the time to put into figuring it out. What it is, and what I'll go into explaining, is an open standard for securely providing authentication and, more importantly, authorization for your application. So you as the developer, building a feature into your app, a social feature such as share with some external network or community, Facebook, Twitter, Foursquare, one of these things. When you're building this app, you need to think about, how do we actually post that message? Well, the app actually, the mechanics of it are done with web technologies like JavaScript and so on. But the data that's being sent, obviously your users using your app are going to provide their message. But think about whose credentials are going to be used. Are your users going to input their password into your app and you're going to relay that to Twitter? Or should they be sent to Twitter first and authenticate there and back? So, it's really important to recognize that, framing this problem of authentication over the web in a clear way. So, the real solution to this is, think about security with, house keys, car keys, right? If I'm a user and I want to give an app my credentials. It's like handing over the keys to your house to a complete stranger, right? Do you actually trust that person? They might be trustworthy and they might be a good person, but you never know. I mean, the general answer is no, you should never trust anyone about anything, even people that you do think you trust. So think about, what if there was this concept of this limited control key? What if there was a special key you can give someone that instead of open the doors to everything, and you can do anything with it, it only did certain things that you controlled? That's ultimately the concept of what OAuth is. Does anyone drive a Volkswagen or my German friend? Anyone? No? Mercedes, whatever? Yeah. So there are certain cars, certain vehicles that have special key mechanisms, and it also provides a valet key. So when you go and pick your car up from the dealership, you get this funny little key right here that doesn't look like the main ones, and it's designed to provide limited controlled access to your car. So if you were to go to valet parking, you give the driver that key. And it means, he can start the car, he can drive it, a kilometer or so if he needs to, but that's it. Can't get in the trunk, can't get in the glove compartment, can't do things like that, right? So you as the user have control over that experience. This is where we want to get with web and OAuth, okay? So that's really what it is. It's the valet key of the web. It's a way of providing access, in a limited context to someone you don't necessarily trust, that allows them to do the things that you want them to do. Okay? So this came to be as this open standard for authorization. And instead of giving passwords, managing passwords on behalf of a user, it's done so with tokens. And we'll show exactly what those are in a moment. And there's a couple evolutions of the OAuth standard. It actually started once upon a time as OpenID, and that moved standardized into OAuth version 1. Now we have 2. And that's sort of the current de facto go-to standard that a lot of sites are using. Any questions so far? Or comments or feedback? No? So if you as a developer want to integrate your app or your website or your content with any of these services, you can. And I've just sort of sorted them here on this slide based off of which version of the OAuth standard each of these sites supports, right? So if you want to add the ability to send tweets from your app, you're going to need to know a bit more about OAuth 1 standard, right? But if you want to integrate with Salesforce.com or even Foursquare or Bitly or whatever, OAuth 2 is the way to go. And so this is as of September, early this week. This is going to change, obviously. We may see some of these service providers switching over to OAuth 2 or maybe back and forth depending on their needs. We're going to see more and more added to this as these communities provide APIs for developers to use. And so I think I'm excited by that. So just to summarize how it works, and you've probably already used this already if you've ever allowed access to an app to use Foursquare, Facebook, or Twitter. You may not have noticed it, but if you've ever seen a screen that looks like this in the browser, probably what's happening under the covers is there's an OAuth handshake happening. So the basic principle of it is when you first authenticate, say you're in an app, you're sent to the external site. You're actually redirected to Twitter, where you provide your credentials to Twitter. You're not giving your password or your username to the app. You're outside of the scope of the app. You're now in the domain of those external sites, so you authenticate there. What happens then is Twitter redirects you back to the app with a token, and it's through this concept of this authorized token that you can then access the secured services. And whenever Twitter says, all right, I don't think this token is valid anymore, it's exceeded a certain time period, 2 weeks expiry or whatever, this user has violated an account, we want to terminate their access, they can control that, right? They can deactivate that valet key, and then that application that you've built no longer enables that user to access these resources. So remember when I said that OAuth is kind of scary? This is why. This is sort of the workflow of what OAuth 1 looks like, and I just want to quickly kind of go through it. So the whole principle of OAuth 1 is this remote service has no idea what this app is. Like, it doesn't have any awareness of who you are and what it is before the initial request is made. It's stateless, right? So what happens is the app first asks for a request token It's just a simple GET request. It can be done via AJAX to a static URL, a web service that says, get me some request token that I can then use to continue the actual authentication step. So the service responds, boom. So your app now has this request token. It then sends another redirect over to that remote site, right? So the user goes from seeing your app to the Twitter login page or the Foursquare login page or whatever. But in the background, what's also happened is the app has sent over that request token as well. So the remote service knows, okay, this user is authenticating with this request token that was requested by this app. All right, so it's connecting the dots there. Once the user has successfully authenticated, proven they are who they say they are, Twitter, Facebook, whatever, the remote service redirects back to the app and sends along some additional information. We now have tokens, we now have a verifier. At this point, the app then makes another request using this secured token information to the remote service saying, okay, the user is authenticated, we've also requested access, so now authorize this application using this information. Sends back this information. If everything's fine, the response is a token, and then it's this token information that's used to make requests to secured services, right? So here's an example of accessing a secured service. Twitter, as an example, provides public and secured APIs. So if you wanted to get just a list of tweets, that's actually a public API. Any app can do that without authenticating whatsoever. Simple AJAX request, give it a couple parameters, the user account and a number, like the last 20 messages from Laurent, who just walked through the door. You can do that without authenticating. But if you actually want to tweet, if you actually want to submit something on behalf of an active Twitter account, then you need to provide this authentication information. Did everyone follow me through that crazy workflow? It's kind of nuts, huh? The way I actually also like to use an analogy, think of it like meeting someone for the first time, right? So this is you, this is them. So it's like, hello. And they're like, hello. And they're like, I am Bob. And they're like, oh, hi, Bob. I like you. I trust you. There you go. Bob's like, can I access your car? It's like, yeah, here's the valet key. Go for it. And then from that point on, you can get into those services, right? In a limited and controlled way. So this auth token represents what the user accepted when they log into the page. So remember when you log in to Twitter, sometimes it says, will you grant Adam's application access to post tweets, read data, so on. And then it'll give you a list of things it doesn't allow you to do. Change profile information, change password information, right? Completely keeps that separate. However, it's a lot of work, right? There's a lot of bubbles in that workflow that you as a developer kind of need to build on your own just to connect, just to get to the end, before you can even actually do anything, right? There's a lot of work. And obviously the community recognized this, and they're like, okay, we need to simplify this. Let's make this better. In comes OAuth 2. The way this is different is before, when OAuth 1, at the beginning of the transaction, the app and the service had no idea who each other were. With OAuth 2, they do, because you as the developer have first gone and registered your app with this service, right? You may have seen this if you've already tried using Facebook or Twitter or Foursquare's developer APIs. You log into an account, you create an app, right? And you actually give information about your app, and then it gives you some certain client IDs and secret tokens that you use. So how OAuth 2 works is, given that initial information, you start sending that data right away. So you redirect over to Foursquare's login page with a client ID. So Foursquare knows, okay, this is Adam's app that's trying to authenticate a user. Once that's done, we send back. So there's no initial request token. There's one less hop to get to this point. And then it reduces the the number of bounces back and forth by, I think, 2 points, 2 data points. So it's a slight improvement. It's a bit smoother. It's certainly easier to understand and implement from a developer's perspective because there's less pieces. But at the end of the day, it's very similar to OAuth 1, right? Once you've authenticated, once the remote service knows who you are, you can then make authorized requests to the endpoint. but still, I mean, there's still a lot of work there, right? Like this is, it's not an easy process to do this. So what can be done, right? What are developers left to do? Do they have to implement everything? Do they have to reinvent the wheel, build it from scratch? Well, fortunately, the answer is no. I mean, there's a lot of hard work out there that other developers have done for you on behalf. One is a library called JS OAuth that simplifies that crazy workflow into some really easy object module-oriented steps. So remember at the very first point of OAuth 1, there's a request token. So you basically make a request to a remote service to say, give me the first step along the way. Instead of creating all that JavaScript code manually, all you have to do is, where's my guy? Reference the instance of this OAuth object, which is defined in this library, and then just start using it. Send the requests. And that's really how it flows back and forth. So you can actually start reading token information out of it. You can set the token information for this object, and then just make subsequent calls to it as you like. If you're interested, I can show a bit more detailed example because I have a demo that I'd like to show. Some developers have followed the principle of using a child browser, which is effectively just another web view layered on top of what you're currently seeing. So from the user's perspective, they go from seeing your app to another child view, which then loads Twitter or Facebook or Bitly or this remote site. And those web views can speak to each other because they're in the same process, and therefore, the parent web view can read cookie information, query string information, whatever is being handled in that child browser view. So the user authenticates in that view, hits complete, the parent view reads the information and closes the child browser, returning the user to the application. A good open source example is this Lemma for Playbook application, that's out there in the wild. It's published on GitHub by the developer who produced it. It was designed, I believe it uses a combination of the JS OAuth library and this child browser extension. And then finally, BlackBerry Dev Relations has actually just finished publishing, finished developing 3 samples that we're going to publish as soon as we can. They will be located in that GitHub repo. It's just going through code reviews right now. But the idea was, let's put the code in developers' hands. Let's give them the tools they need to enable themselves to build this, so you don't have to make it as easy as possible. So we focused on 2, showing how to do OAuth 1 and 2, focusing on Twitter for OAuth 1, Foursquare and Facebook for OAuth 2. And just to show you these right now live, Alan, could you switch me to device? Okay, so you see these 3 tiny hippos here at the bottom? These are them. So here's Twitter. We've got Web Inspector enabled. This is just a really simple app. So when I click to begin, what's happening is we're going to use that JS OAuth library to submit all those requests back and forth to get a request token, to redirect me over to the user, to the client site, contacting Twitter. We're still in the app, right? We've just redirected to the remote location. Let me actually authenticate here. Come on, you. I'm just going to do that. I trust you, but no, I don't trust you. Just a moment. Okay. So I'll close the keyboard. I hope I typed it right. Redirecting you back. And so we're back in the app. And so remember that workflow diagram? I think there were 9 bubbles along the way. we're now back to the last one. So the app now has knowledge of the auth token information that's needed to send back to Twitter whenever we make some access. So this is now a Twitter client, yeah. You've authenticated with Twitter. You can access any secured services that they've made available through their API. So let's post a tweet. Let's ask Dave. Hope, oops, space, you are feeling better. B-A-L-M-E-R. And since we're a social group, if you guys wanted to post a similar tweet to Dave, I'm sure he'd appreciate it. Where did you go? Oh, right in front of my eyes. All right, we go tweet, posting tweet posted. Now let's just do some due diligence. Do we have network connection on this one, Alan? Do you know if we do?
On that computer?
Yeah. Okay, good.
It's a hardwired connection.
All right, can we switch back then, please? I just want to actually... Resolving proxy, that's interesting. Oh, you beat me to it? Oh, there we are. Hope you're feeding Ballard Balmer, right? There's my tweet. So, it's not just smoke and mirrors. This sample actually works as it's designed to. And the idea is once this is published in GitHub, everyone can have access to this code and then play with it as they like. Questions, comments about OAuth? Is that pretty straightforward and clear? Hey, Damien.
I just noticed one thing, and as a user, I would be hesitant sometimes because it makes a statement that now by authorizing to this one tweet, it seems like you can do a lot of things in your absence. Like it almost seems like I'm just saying that the authentication, it almost gives the impression to the user that it now authorizes this app to hijack Twitter.
Oh, I see. But true. No, it's a good. No, that's a good point. I mean, you as the user still have control over expiring that feature. So you can actually log into Twitter and go to the authorized applications list and remove all that.
Funny, but you don't. I mean, I understand that.
Hmm?
But as a user, they can understand that you say that given rights in perpetuity, not one-time use for this application.
Understood.
I don't think there's any way around that. Is there a standard?
No, it seems to be the clear, de facto way of doing that. So if the folks in the back who didn't hear that, it was just the comment was about how do you trust how long or what the application is doing with that token after you've authorized it? And essentially you don't. Yeah, you really don't. It's up to you to be responsible to manage which apps you've authorized and take care of that. But as Paul said, the typical user doesn't really know that, right? Like my grandma using her Twitter app probably wouldn't know how to log into Twitter or do that, right? That's a good point. Very valid point. What do you think, Luca? Did I cover OAuth well? Missed anything? Cool. All right. Moving on. How are we for time? Good. We're just on pace. So BBM for API. So I actually see a few faces in the audience who have been working on BBM for a while. It was published a couple of years ago as an SDK for developers to start using, launched on the BlackBerry Java platform first, and then it was made available to WebWorks. And that was obviously for the smartphone platform. And then really proud to see our product guys have gotten things together, and now we're actually launching at the same time. So yesterday we updated our native SDK and the WebWorks SDK for BlackBerry 10, and they both have BBM support in them. So I'm really, really happy to see that. It's part of the system, right? So there's a BBM client on the device. There's underlying developer APIs that are built into the OS as well. And there's these developer APIs that are part of the SDK, which you consume in your applications. And the idea is they're available. They're ported into the WebWorks SDK to make it available for you to connect that HTML5 content with these APIs. What can you actually do with the BBM SDK? Quite a lot. And it's quite, as you discover more and more about these features, it's quite surprising just how powerful they are. Some of these just wanted to highlight is invitations to BBM, or through BBM. So the idea is you enable a feature in an app that allows a user to invite another connected user to download your app, right? You're turning their social network into a marketing machine for you. And evidence, and we've got statistical evidence for this that shows how successful this is. If you get an invite, in email from a person you don't know, I mean, first instinct is just delete it, right? There's a very low engagement rate. But if you get an invite from your best friend who's recommending, you should really try this app, you're probably going to try it, right? Like, this is someone you implicitly trust, you care about, you value their opinions because you're connected with them. The BBM social community is very tightly connected, and so if you can enable those users to market and spread the message about your app, you're going to see a huge number of downloads. And we've mentioned this in keynotes and sessions before that I think it was something like less than 10% of all apps in App World represent a huge percentage of the total downloads because they're BBM connected. Right? It's almost like a factor of 15 or something like that. An app with BBM connected status has 15 times more downloads than the average application in App World. I think that's something around the metric that we're doing. So that's certainly a feature that I really encourage everyone to focus on adding to their app and do it in a very natural way. Don't put a giant pop-up saying, invite everyone on your list, please, right now. Just make it easier for the users to do that. Another cool thing is in the BBM client, everyone has a personal profile box where you enter your name, a description about yourself, and there's this, the ability to make updates to the status. So you could say, Rory is playing, the Brick Breaker HTML5 game app. That would show up in his status. All his friends would see it. They could actually click on that. It would take them to App World where they can see that game and make a decision about downloading it. The idea is just to connect people as much as possible to the content. Likewise, the ability to share content. This is coming on the roadmap. So to actually send messages back and forth, use BBM as a protocol. Right? You can have real-time communication between two apps. We've seen this done quite successfully already on the smartphone platform. If anyone, I believe Jerome, made a Connect 4 application. So if anyone knows Jerome Carty, he's at this event. He made a Connect 4 application using BBM as the way of sending messages between apps about the events that are happening in the application, right? So when user A makes a change to the game, it sends a state update over BBM via some JSON data object that the other apps consume and translate accordingly. That's coming. What it looks like is this, right? So there's this, in WebWorks, there's this BlackBerry.bbm JavaScript object that you can access, and there's a variety of methods and properties in there that exist. This is just as simply as it is how the invite to download method works. So say this was bound to a button on the page, right? So this method gets called when the user interacts with a button or a menu item or something. The invite to download method fires, and what they see is a pop-up dialog box with a list of all of their contacts. So that dialog box is coming from the BlackBerry 10 OS. The contact information is coming from their BBM client, and they have control over who they choose to invite to the thing. Once they hit OK, this callback method gets fired, and then you can actually process it. And they've built an anti-spam mechanism in, just limiting the ability to invite more than 10 separate invites per minute. I think that's had limited success in preventing spammers from abusing this method in their apps. But ultimately, once this has been completed, then you can respond programmatically, right? Say you wanted to, have some sort of reward system for encouraging people to actually do this, some achievement or something, you can then do that. How about that? What would this look like? Well, say we wanted to add a badge, for instance, to their profile box, saying, congratulations, you've, unlocked this accomplishment by participating in this social experience in the app. Let's reward you for that. How do you modify the BBM profile box? Well, just like I said before, BlackBerry.bbm object, and then you drill into this profile box where you can add the item, you can remove an item, you can actually clear all the items that are that were controlled by your application, of course. What you can do is throw a text message, custom image icon in there as well. You can even add a piece of metadata, a cookie, so you can say user pin, you can add some value such that when other users interact with that when they see it, their BBM connected app can consume that data and do something with it if they want. It's quite powerful. And then the notification. This is a brand new WebWorks API that's been added to the system that gives developers the ability to integrate with that universal inbox. So putting a message right in front of the users in a way that allows them to immediately see that information. It's done so simply by creating this notification object. Once this has been fired, immediately a new splat icon shows up, on the home screen, alerting the user that something new has arrived. The item gets added to the inbox, and this is the underlying data that's connected to that object. So in this example, this is the message they would see. When they actually click on it, this event starts happening. Right? So this specific example, we launched the browser, right, from the universal inbox. You could target your own application, so you could put in the ID of your BBM connected app, send them straight back to that, for instance, maybe for some reason, or do something else. This all happens through the new invocation framework. So this architecture, you're gonna see this a lot more in more and more BlackBerry code samples. This whole target action structure. This is how you interact with third-party applications on the BlackBerry 10 device. Any questions about that? No, we good? All right. So the concept of gaming obviously can be a very social experience for users. If you're a game developer, there's certainly a lot of value on the BlackBerry platform. For instance, the native SDK has a lot of great frameworks, APIs, and strengths for gaming. But there's also obviously web. We're making a strong play. We support HTML5 Canvas audio and WebGL very well, so game developers have a great opportunity as well on the web side of things. But apart from the actual technology implementation, more about some of the experiences that you add to it, right? How do we actually socialize a game? Well, it's really hard to do that with a single-player, limited replay game, right? So we're going to start talking about connecting two users to each other through a gaming experience. So how do you do that, right? Well, we can do it with BBM, with HTML5 WebSockets, great way of doing communication between the devices. I keep getting tons of questions about WebRTC, real-time communication. That's coming. It's not on the immediate roadmap, but the browser dev team is working on it, so we will see that there at some point in the future, hopefully sooner than later, of course. But the idea is, if we can add certain features to these games to make them more enjoyable to play, people are going to play them longer, right? I think one of the most, obviously the most successful financial games are, multimedia online real-time games, right? These are subscription-based ones that people spend all their lives, playing, and they're highly addictive because there's a real social element to it, right? You team up with each other, you join guilds, you join groups, you go on quests together, and those sorts of things. These are all features that end users actually may not recognize they're doing, but it keeps them connected to the app and keeps them, rebuying that next expansion pack or paying for, digital good upgrades or those sorts of things. It's beyond just the features of the game. The social experience represents a lot of value too. Excuse me. I think this was Dave's slide. He had something witty to add to this. I don't know what it was, so let me just skip over it. All right, and then yeah, this whole concept of gamifying your content. Achievements, obviously a great way of doing that. Add some sort of reward system to your application that encourages usage, encourages your users to share information with each other. There's great opportunities to monetize that as well. So, as I explained already, some ways of actually doing that are through things like integrating with social networks, posting messages to Facebook, sending data to Twitter, saying, hey, I'm using this game, check it out. Or here's a screenshot, look, I just got a high score. Send that to your social networks. That would be awesome. Over BBM, send it one-to-one or one-to-many. You can actually connect group chats through the BBM API SDK. The idea is, generate excitement, generate activity, and turn that into money. Because at the end of the day, that's the deal. This was the best. I think that was my favorite part of the keynote when Torsten said isolation. That was my favorite thing. So yeah, socializing your apps. I started the session talking about this whole connecting, sharing, and succeeding. I hope that we've certainly explained how we can connect, technologies such as OAuth and BBM, how to share, what types of information people care about, gamifying, achievement-based conversations, and those sorts of things, and then providing opportunities for developers to be successful. Right? We're going to continue to support web standards in a very strong and fluid way. We're committed to being the leading browser out there, not just for mobile, but for all users. And doing so is going to ensure that developers are going to be fully equipped and armed to build awesome web content. And like I said earlier, a lot of this is open source. So if you're interested in participating in this and in building this platform, we'd love to have your help. Right? I mean, the strength of the WebWorks product is that you can connect web content with native capabilities. And we have this architecture of extensions and APIs. And RIM is doing a pretty good job at publishing its own APIs. Right? The BBM SDK is available through an API. We have integration with the inbox, which is good. But you can build custom extensions. So we can add all sorts of cool social-based features to an app. Right? On Playbook and smartphone, we had some developers publishing a barcode scanner API, which even supported QR codes. And if you've seen like giant billboards at the side of highways with the QR codes printed on that, it's a real social experience you can add to your application quite easily through these APIs. Looks like someone added a slide for me, but didn't tell me they were adding it. So there's some other sessions at this conference that you should check out. I'm sure you've already seen this many times before in other sessions, so I won't spend too much on that. We've got a tweet up tonight. I hope everyone knows about that in the social desk area out at the front. Obviously, I would guess everyone who came to this session is a social person because that's the nature of this conversation. So I'd love to see you there. Maybe we can talk more about this and you can meet some developers who are doing cool things with BBM or OAuth or any other frameworks out there that might be cool. And then obviously, yeah, download the conference guide. I think it might be a little late for that, but there you go. And I've added a few of my 10,000 reasons to believe. I think believing in BlackBerry because it's a socially connected platform is a pretty good reason. So, and I hope you do too. So with that, I thank you very much for your time. Appreciate everyone's interest in the BlackBerry platform and being socially connected and so on. And if there's any questions, this guy wants to clap, do it, man. Go for it. Thanks. Any questions about what we covered? We good so far? Is anybody working with like OAuth and Twitter or Facebook or Foursquare already? Or any other networks I haven't covered that people should know about? No? We good? Okay. No, they're not. Chad just finished coding them. We submitted it through our open source tracking system, and it's going through all the approvals. So maybe actually, you know what? I could even be totally wrong. Let's go find out. So if we go to github.com/BlackBerry. show you exactly where this repo is. There we are. And then we've got a lot of sample code out here. See this guy here, BB10 WebWorks samples? This is where it's going to end up. So we got a few things in here already, using the invocation framework, using push, obviously, and then the latest one we just added yesterday was Brick Breaker. But you're gonna see 3 repos added there. Three folders added to this repo. One's gonna be called Twitter-OAuth1, and the other is gonna be Facebook and Foursquare-OAuth2. Yeah. Questions, comments, feedback? No? All right then. I guess I'll give you 10 minutes of your day back, and please, yeah, send Dave a hope you feel better soon message. I'm sure he'd appreciate that. But finally, thanks everyone for your time. Have a great day.